All right, so now that we're done with the O-ring seals here, which obviously pretty simple, right? Okay. Now we want to talk about maybe installing some of these shaft seals. They also call them oil seals, and into some type of a housing. Now, very few times should you actually have a shaft and a housing installed to where you have to go around the shaft and into here. This here is the best case scenario because I have the seal and I have a housing that I can put out on my bench, and I can get a little bit a little bit more positive working environment here to get this driven in. Now, when I talk about driving it in, generally what you're going to have is a seal driver. Now, do you have a seal driver for every size? You may or may not. There are kits out there that have seal drivers. This one came with this kit, and this is what we're going to use so that you can see why you would use it. Now, the first thing is there's a boss on it, and the boss is going to be close to the inside diameter of the seal. Okay, so that's going to keep this thing centered on the seal. And then the outer diameter here is very close to the outside diameter of this, but it's not bigger. So if I go and drive it in, I'm not going to actually hit the outside of the housing and tear it up. So all of this stuff is centered, and I'm putting the energy on this closer to the outside portion, which is actually, this right here is a rubber seal, but there's actually metal on the inside. Okay, so that is giving you the integrity on the outside here. And again, so I want to just really focus on where that metal part is. So what does it all look like? All right, this is what it looks like. We're going to take our seal. We're going to take and set it down on top of the housing here. And we're going to try to line it up. We want it somewhat flat all the way around. Okay, so we want to see that this area here doesn't stick up any more than this area. And then we can slide this right on there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get either a rubber hammer or we're going to get a dead blow hammer to be able to tap this in. We don't want to take steel on steel with our driver because we want to use it again and we don't want to mess up that surface. So now we're just going to start tapping. We don't go beating the heck out of it. The whole objective isn't necessarily to seat it in one hit, but rather just start to tap. Now, if you see a side that's a little bit higher, you want to focus on that some, and just keep going back and forth, and just gently. Okay, you can hear the tone there. It changed a little bit, and what you were hearing is that bottoming out inside of that cavity. Bottoming out is wonderful, because then it tells me that that seal is sitting perfectly flat inside of there. Okay, now getting this thing out, what does that all look like? Now, there are some seal removers that are essentially like a hook, and you stick it in here and you pull it out. But when that happens, you generally tear up the inside sealing lips of this. Okay, just as simple as that. And so you're just going to have to plan on replacing it. Now, oftentimes when you're removing a seal, it's because the seal has been damaged. But in this case, we're not going to do that. And we're going to show you how to do a different little method here. Now, this is a great case scenario here. You're not always going to get this, but I have the part here that I'm going to be able to stick in my vise, and I'm going to put it upside down. So remember, it went in this way, so I'm going to drive it back out that same way. So I'm going to turn this over like this, set it in my trusty vise over here. And I really don't like beating on screwdrivers, okay? And it is definitely not recommended to do that. There are some that are specifically rated for it, so the steel shank goes all the way through and you're hitting on it back here, but it's not a great idea. But in this particular case, I know I'm not exerting a whole bunch of force, and the driving tip is perfect. First of all, it's got a bit of a blunt edge on there, so it's not gonna dig or cut into my seal. And it's flat enough to where it's gonna get out towards that edge so that I don't have to damage in part of the inside section of this. So what I'm going to do is angle this kind of outward and get it out towards the outside part of that lip on the inside. Okay, so essentially what we're doing here is we're in this section right here, and we would just want to put some pressure in there and then start moving it around and push that out. So this is what it looks like. I'm not going to touch the sealing surface on the inside. I'm going to grab my rubber hammer here, and I'm going to tap a little bit, and I'm going to move to another spot because that was the only spot that came down. And I'm going to go around, and I'm going to try to pay attention to make sure that that thing looks like it's still kind of coming out flat or parallel to the surface, if you would. So I'm going to adjust as necessary in order to get this thing to pop right out. Bam, it was that easy. As you can see, I wasn't putting a whole lot of force on there. If you have to put a whole lot of force, there may be something else going on with that situation. And then you can adjust your tools accordingly. But that right there is actually how to install and uninstall these shaft seals.